Welcome to Sizzle Fantasy Sports, the channel with the most sizzling hot fantasy takes and analysis, presented by your host, Gavin.
Rodgers clean pocket, throws the middle of the end zone. Devontae, touchdown, and a dagger.
How's it going, you guys? Welcome back to the SFS Channel. My name's Gavin, and today we are once again joined by Eric to talk about some 2021 NFL free agents. Today we'll be talking about the wide receivers, and one of these players is actually very important to Eric's team, so let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. All right, the first player I want to talk about today is Allen Robinson, currently of the Chicago Bears, but obviously his contract with the team has come to an end. Robinson is 28 years old and is playing for the Bears, who only have $14 million in cap space projected for the 2021 season. Obviously, Robinson is a big fantasy piece. Eric, you're a Bears fan. You know the most about Robinson. So if you have something you want to say about him here quick, I'll let you take it away.
I mean, he already said it was 365 days that they could have re-signed him. It's seeming like the Bears, my loved Bears, are not going to bring him back, which is really unfortunate because you see a guy getting that many catches, being that big of a part of the offense. 102 receptions. I mean, that means you have to pay the guy. They should have done it already. Bears fans like myself are not happy. When it first started kind of becoming a trend to be like, oh, re-sign Robinson, I was like, okay, well, I mean, there's some time, but now you'd have to do it now if he's really going to stay. It sounds like he's going to want to go to another team. A big thing is, I mean, there's a lot of teams who could use a receiver. Our little thought was, if he goes to the Jets, and if they get a QB like Deshaun Watson, that would be a very interesting combo.
Lethal. I am a Packer fan, and I guess there's something to me being big fans of wide receivers from opposing division teams because I love Justin Jefferson for the Vikings, but Allen Robinson for the last 2 years has 100% been my guy in fantasy, and he's been one of my favorites in draft season. I mean, in my opinion, he's one of the most consistent and safest floor plays in fantasy football, and you cannot go wrong with him in your lineups. And he had 1,250 receiving yards and only 6 touchdowns, but he finished well within the wide receiver one discussion and range this season. So I can't imagine what he would do if he was in a team with the top 5 quarterback play.
Yeah.
We're both Jets fans, I guess you could say. Obviously, my first team is 100% the green and gold. I love the Packers. Eric is a diehard Bears fan, but we both love watching the Jets, and we've had to watch them just kind of pitifully sit around. So if Allen Robinson did become a Jet, obviously there's nothing really linking them right now. But right now, Deshaun Watson is actually the number one, or it's rumored that his number one preference is to go to New York.
Which really sucks for my boy Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Maybe Sam Darnold goes to the Bears because Deshaun Watson was... His second choice is Miami. Clearly, the Bears are not a front runner in getting him, especially with their cap issues. Like you said,
right.
$14 million is their projected. But I would love to see a Sam Darnold come to the Bears, and we can bolster our line a little bit for him, because that's kind of the issue with the Jets. He doesn't have a lot of weapons, too.
Right.
I want to see...
I mean, I don't even know if Denzel Mims is a number one wide receiver. He showed flashes.
No, he was okay.
He seems like a really, really athletic and solid number 2.
Yeah, it might have been kind of like a Fulgham few games. I know Fulgham was kind of crazy for a few games, but rookie guys, you don't really have a lot of film on them in the NFL, so corners might struggle a little bit with a guy like that. Fulgham came out of nowhere.
Was basically the only guy they could
it's the Eagles,
to.
so you don't really... I mean, they have nothing to lose, so...
The one thing I would say about Allen Robinson, obviously from a fantasy perspective, is he could set off a huge domino effect that could really affect how players are valued this season, because obviously not everywhere can be like the 2019 Buccaneers, where Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were top 5 wide receivers in fantasy, or wide receiver ones and high-end ones at that. I mean, there is the potential that Allen Robinson wants to go play for a contender, and he wants to go play for a top quarterback, and by going to a team like that, he might become the backseat to another number 1 wide receiver, or he might even just kind of decapitate someone else's fantasy value or his own and lessen it in that sense if he receives less targets or whatnot. So where Allen Robinson ends up is actually a very big deal for 2021 fantasy football, because he has a large impact on whatever team he goes to. So from a fantasy perspective, I think even as a Bears fan too, you're really hoping that he gets re-signed because we know what he can do with that team, even with that quarterback play. So personally, from a fantasy perspective as well, I would love to see Sam Darnold be his quarterback, but that's just purely speculation. So nothing obviously that would tie those guys together. The next guy up here that I want to talk about, my number 2 free agent wide receiver, is Will Fuller of the Houston Texans for the duration of his rookie contract here. Will Fuller was a beast this season. He was a low-end wide receiver 1, put up very, very productive numbers until he was suspended in the back end of the season. So Will Fuller and Deshaun Watson, here is the thing I have to say about these guys. The Houston Texans are currently over the cap right now. They have some big cap issues, and for a team that just went 4-12,
yeah, that is that's as bad as it gets. That's the stagflation, if you will, right there.
My shocking take right here is that number 4 and number 15 will not be in Texans uniforms next season. I didn't bring this up to you before we filmed, but my speculation I had today while I was doing some things was I thought, if Deshaun Watson becomes a New York Jet, what if he brings along his favorite wide receiver from Houston with him? Because he needs a target there. I would be interested
to see that. I can see Will Fuller in a Jets uniform. I could definitely see him. He's one of those receivers that would fit on the Jets. He's kind of a route runner. He's
a burner too.
He's got some speed. I don't know. He fits the mold. It's like Robbie if he was a little bigger.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, honestly. I think Will Fuller, he is the type of player, whereas Allen Robinson, I think, is a true alpha wide receiver 1. I think Will Fuller can be a wide receiver 1 with competent enough quarterback play. But I think if you put Will Fuller in a situation where there's another highly talented wide receiver, we saw it with DeAndre Hopkins, he is definitely the type of player who is very talented but would take that back seat and therefore see a big dip in fantasy production. So landing spot is going to be key for Will Fuller. I don't think that he's just a plug-and-play regardless of where he ends up. But this next player, I think, might not necessarily. I think that this guy, Chris Godwin, is a wide receiver 1 wherever he goes to. And we actually saw some big regression from Godwin this year. Tampa Bay currently has $25 million in cap space projected for next season.
Which is fantastic for a team that's about to attempt to make it to the Super Bowl.
Right. This video is being recorded prior to the NFC Championship game. We'll see when this gets up for you guys. But
excited.
Chris, as a Packer fan, I've got my fingers crossed, but I am terrified of Tom Brady. It's supposed to snow in Green Bay, though, so I'm optimistic about that. But
Bills Mafia for me.
Chris Godwin, 25 years old, only making $800K, obviously a mid-round pick, so was not highly suited out of the draft. But 65 catches only, 840 yards, and 7 touchdowns this year. A big regression with Tom Brady from those 2019 numbers where he had over 1,300 yards with Jameis and 9 touchdowns. Obviously, that season was key to telling what Chris Godwin can do, and I think he walks into a situation and can be the one wherever he goes. I think it's likely, though, that he remains with Tampa Bay.
Yeah, he's a very talented receiver. His route running is good. His hands are very good. But that was the issue this year. He had, pins?
Broken finger, and he had pins in his fingers.
Pins in his fingers, and he even played with kind of like a club, which is really impressive. Tough. He actually had a decent game. And I don't know. I think he's a really good receiver. He took that step back with an injury, but he'll still be solid. I mean, he's going to be fantasy relevant no matter what. He's going to get volume. So I like Chris Godwin. Injury sucks for receivers. It's a bigger deal.
He also had a hamstring, I believe, and a foot that he dealt with throughout the season. So
you hope he can stay healthy next season.
All those Tampa Bay receivers have had injury struggles this year. Mike Evans had a hamstring, I believe.
Yep, and
Antonio Brown's out this weekend.
Even Scotty Miller had a lot of injuries this year.
I love Scotty Miller. I was all over him.
He's going to be playing this week, right?
Came in. Yep, Scotty Miller. I'm kind of afraid of him, honestly. Yeah, Chris Godwin, I think he's a wide receiver 1 wherever he goes. If for some reason he was to depart in free agency, I would love to see him connect with a top-end quarterback, because for a slot receiver who is so good as a deep threat as well, and a guy who is honestly a bigger slot target, 6'1", you can see about 210 pounds there. Chris Godwin has the body type to be a dominant alpha-type receiver. And with the rest of his game, how polished he is, I think he can be very, very productive if he's healthy. So wherever Chris Godwin goes, I think he's fine. This next player is a really interesting one to me. Kenny Golladay didn't play much for Detroit this season.
But when he did, he was basically every win, right? I think they won every game that he was in almost. But
over the last 2 seasons, when Kenny Golladay is not in the lineup, Detroit tends to not win any of the games he's not there. Kenny G in 2019 had 65 catches, 1,900 yards, nearly 1,200, and 11 touchdowns. So he's only 27 years old, just coming off the rookie contract. As you can see on the screen, he was a mid-third round pick. So obviously a home run for Detroit. Matt Stafford was still pretty good without Golladay, but with Golladay, I think that Lions football team would have been a lot better, because Marvin Jones almost had 1,000 yards this season playing as the one for that team. And I think if you move him back into the number 2 role, which is probably where he's more better suited, I think that team's offense takes it to the next level. So I would love to see Kenny Golladay come back to Detroit. They have a lot of defensive players they could make roster cuts on to save a lot of room in cap. Right now they only have about $12 million. But from a fantasy perspective, I would love to see Kenny Golladay back with Detroit, because him and Matt Stafford are easy money.
I really like Matt Stafford. He's an underrated quarterback. He makes those crazy throws that no one notices, but Mahomes, when he does it, everyone talks about it. Like, Stafford makes no-look throws all the time. But anyway, if you get a big receiver, 6'4", 218, to a guy that can throw like that, he's going to get behind guys and get touchdowns. He's a touchdown machine.
His post and fade routes over smaller DBs are so
That's why a number
good.
2 would make more sense for him, because he'll bully those little corners. But I really like him. It would be nice to see him go back to the Lions. I don't think it'll be the same if he goes to another team, unless he
needs a big arm quarterback, because he can move down the field, he can win those jump balls. And honestly, I think Kenny Golladay is very spatially aware. We've seen him make some very, very impressive catches and some toe drags on the sideline too. So I think he has the intangibles to get it done, and I think that Detroit is kind of a perfect fit situation for him. So if he could stay with the Lions, that would be a huge bonus for them. The next player up here, I think we are going to see in a new jersey next year, and that is Antonio Brown of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now.
Well, there's a lot of Browns, too.
There's a lot of Browns. Trying to find him. There he is. He's in a Pats uniform still. Antonio Brown right now, 33 years old. The time kind of flew with Antonio Brown. I feel like he was under 30 just the last time we saw him play, but Antonio Brown not making too much money, only $1.5 million with the Bucs this year. We talked about Tampa has a pretty flexible amount of cap space, but when you look at Mike Evans, we assume they'll bring back Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson's been impressive in his very limited playing time. I think this team already has some weapons at the wide receiver position that they can have for a cheaper and more affordable price. And Antonio Brown was only around for, less than half the season. He had 45 receptions, 483 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So clearly, I mean, as he got rolling and as he got into the system, he was very productive and showed that he can still be a very, very productive player. So I don't think they're going to be able to bring him back. Who knows where Antonio Brown will be next season, but I don't think it will be with Tampa. I know he loves Tom Brady. I know that he loves the culture there. And he's actually been on his best behavior so far. Unfortunately for Antonio, he will not be suiting up for the NFC Championship game, but I think that he could be a very productive player next season. And if we see him keep his act together, I think Antonio Brown could be a high-end wide receiver too for fantasy.
He's still one of the more talented receivers in the league. His route running is still pristine. His hands are fantastic. His spectacular catch. I mean, some of the catches he's made in the end zone are just very impressive. He's gonna play. I mean, you just hope that he stays healthy, and you hope that he stays out of trouble. I mean, you get him on your team, the risk is you just cut him if there's one little thing now. You can't risk having extra issues, but fantasy-wise, he's a guy that people should still really consider.
Absolutely. I don't think, obviously, the year he was with Oakland in the preseason, I believe Antonio Brown was going as a late second, early third round pick that year with a new team. Obviously, that never panned out. He never played a snap for the Raiders. and then he went to New England, was very good in that one game, and then they cut him after some other stuff came out. But I believe he has a civil case for December of this year.
Okay.
That was released earlier. I believe he vandalized some cameras in his gated neighborhood or something dumb and trashed a kid's bike or something. I don't remember the exact story, but he's always getting into something. But the last quick note here on Antonio Brown. I think he's still highly talented. Eric talked about how the skills and the intangibles are there to be a great productive player. I would say maybe the one thing I think he's lacking, or is at least regressed in, is I think his burst is a little bit less than it once was. Obviously, he's still in very good shape, and he was getting into better shape as he played more and more games. But I think that Antonio Brown's peak performances are behind him, but he can still be a very productive player. The next player up here is going to be JuJu Smith-Schuster.
There's also a lot of Smiths.
If I can find him on here.
Might just wanted to go JuJu there.
That might be the best bet here.
Made things a little faster.
JuJu Smith-Schuster.
I don't think there's anyone else named JuJu in the league.
JuJu Smith-Schuster, 25 years old, and it seems like he's grown up pretty quickly here since my time watching him. I remember back when he was an electric rookie, he only just barely turned 20 years old, I think. But he was
youngest player ever?
I believe he was.
Yeah.
And he was the youngest player to have 2,000 receiving yards, or it was some sort of receiver thing. But the Pittsburgh Steelers have $22 million in cap space. Obviously, they've already got Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool on the roster, but JuJu had a decent year, actually, 97 receptions. I didn't feel like he was actually that involved in the offense, but he was. Nearly 100 catches for JuJu. 831 yards, 9 touchdowns, and finished as wide receiver 18, although he did play all 17 games. So I think that the fact that he didn't miss a game skews his numbers a bit over some other guys who I think actually had a bigger impact than he did.
Yeah.
But JuJu still is, I think he's a very good number 2 wide receiver. I don't think that, even from a fantasy perspective, I don't think he'll ever be a fantasy wide receiver 1. I don't think he's quite as talented or of an alpha to be that wide receiver 1 on a football team, but I think that he can go somewhere, be a very productive 2 like we saw him be with Antonio Brown in his first season with the Steelers, and I think that he can put up some pretty good wide receiver 2 numbers in fantasy, but I think his ceiling is capped a little bit.
I wouldn't be too high on him. I wouldn't be picking him as one of your top receivers. Like you said, number 2. He's a decent receiver. He's got a lot of crap for the TikTok stuff.
Yeah, I did not like that at all. The Steelers locker room was too noisy for me this year. I wasn't a fan. Chase Claypool.
He kind of pulled him down with him with the media issues. Because I like how Claypool plays. But
Chase Claypool impressed me, and then as soon as he bashed the Browns and was he was a sore loser after they lost, I was just kind of out on Pittsburgh. They talk too much. I think that there's some disciplinary issues that need to be enforced there, and I think that they just run their mouths too much. So JuJu, definitely talented, definitely can be a productive player, but overall, I think that there's definitely better options out there, and I think that every year, honestly, we've seen his ADP fall since his rookie year. I mean, he was sky high going into year 2, and it's
much better as a number 2 for him.
100%. Okay, so T.Y. Hilton of the Indianapolis Colts is my 7th guy on the list here. T.Y. Hilton was once upon a time Andrew Luck's favorite target. Great deep threat. Honestly, he was probably considered to be one of the top 10 or 12 best receivers in the game. Obviously, though, T.Y. Hilton will be going into his age 32 season. The Colts, however, have a monstrosity in their cap room. They've got $66 million in the vault to spend on free agents, which
always seems like they have
is
all this cap.
They could go out there and reel in Deshaun Watson if they wanted to. Like, they could go out and sign every player available. Not quite, but they could make a big dent in the free agent market if they wanted to. Obviously, no Phillip Rivers anymore. I think that could be a factor for T.Y. here if he wants to stay with the Colts, depending on who that quarterback is next season. I think it could be back to Jacoby Brissett as a bridge quarterback. I think they could go to the draft and look for a guy. But I also think there is some trade options out there for him.
He's still got Jacob Eason on the bench, waiting to come out and show everybody what he's got.
Here's what I'll say about T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. is very injury prone. I think, being realistic here, you can probably, of the 16 relevant fantasy football games per year, I say week 1 through 16 are the real games I look at. I don't like to play fantasy in week 17, so I would avoid keeping your championships that far into the year. I think you're better off stopping early because of players resting and whatnot. But I think, to be honest, 12 games is a surprising amount of games played for T.Y. Hilton in a given season. I mean, his hamstrings, it always seems like there's something wrong with those.
Always has some issues.
His feet, his knees, there's always something wrong. And T.Y. Hilton always has some sort of an ailment that he's playing through.
I will say, at the end of the season, he started to heat up a little more.
He got healthy.
We started to see him be the guy we know and love. He's got the speed, and he just finds openings in the defense. Like when he played the Texans, like
he owns the Houston Texans.
He is the father of the Texans.
He's the father. T.Y. I think T.Y. Hilton is best suited staying with the Colts regardless of who the quarterback is. I really hope they can go out and find someone for him that can help him be productive. If it is Jacoby Brissett, we saw him in 2019 with Brissett be very productive when he was healthy. At the
I'm not a hater on Jacoby Brissett.
I'm not.
He's
serviceable.
He's
a game manager, but he can get the job done. T.Y. Hilton, though, the situation he has in the AFC South is very favorable. He gets the Titans secondary, which was terrible this season. He gets the Texans, who are a mess as well. And he also gets the young Jaguars defense. So I think those are 6 very advantageous matchups if T.Y. Hilton is on the Colts next season. I don't really know where else he would go. I could see T.Y. trying to go with a better quarterback and going to a contender, but I think that his money on the open market is going to be limited.
I think he's pretty committed to the Colts, too.
I think he is, too.
I think he'll stay there, and again, like you said, that could be a very good kind of sleeper. I think people are low on him for the most part just because he's getting older. Again, he's hurt. If you can snatch him up way later, if people are just letting him sit there with the age and the injury, he wouldn't be a bad person to pick up. Clearly not a guy who's going to be probably a number 2, probably more of a flex guy.
I would say that you can count, if he is with the Colts, you can count on T.Y. to be a wide receiver 2 and a strong play at that against those divisional matchups. But I'd say he's a bit more of a streaky flex because T.Y. Hilton's not the type of player you see get 10 catches in a game. He's a 4 for 72, 4 for 85 type guy. Maybe gets a touchdown.
If you can get him though in your draft, it adds a lot of depth to your team.
Yes,
it could be nice ceiling, especially if he's playing one of those division opponents that he usually does pretty well against.
Yep. Moving on here to the number 8 player on my board, I've got Corey Davis, the former first-round pick for the Tennessee Titans. And Corey Davis had somewhat of a breakout season. I went back and looked at his stats, and I was actually very impressed. For a guy who plays on a team with A.J. Brown as the clear 1 right now, and a team that is a predominantly run-heavy football team, 65 receptions, 984, so nearly 1,000 yards for Davis, and 5 touchdowns, which is a decent spot to be at for a wide receiver too, to be honest. He's a really talented guy. I think Corey Davis, playing as that number 2 wide receiver in an offense, has the opportunity to be very productive. Tennessee opted not to pick up his 5th-year option, obviously that being available because he was a former first-round pick. But I think he would be best suited staying with the Titans or going to a team where he can be that number 2 and a guy who frequently finds lighter coverage.
I'm just wondering why they wouldn't pick up the 5th-year option if they really weren't looking to keep him. If he went to another team, I don't know if it'd be as good of a situation. It really depends. He seems like one of those kind of guys that would just go to the Browns and play for a while and then just end up on a roster somewhere and never play, but I think he's talented.
Tight with their cap right now. So
yeah.
I think 5th-year options, I think how it works is you have to pay the player the 10th high. You have to make them that 1-year salary needs to become a top 10 contract at the position. So I think Tennessee is saying Corey Davis is not worth top 10 money. We're going to either try and get him on a more affordable deal, or we're going to let him walk, and I think he might have to walk.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much he values himself, what he thinks he could be in the market. I think there's some teams who saw him play this year, and they're thinking I could
love Corey
pick him
Davis
up
on Green Bay.
I could see it. Another big receiver. You guys kind of need more of a
fast.
quick. I mean, I know he's fast, but you're looking for more of like I don't know, a slot like Cobb.
Yeah,
or like Cobb,
a route shifty guy,
a run after catch guy who can get under. Clearly Adams can do that too. He can do everything, but you need another guy. You need some more depth. I think if you guys don't pick a receiver, I will be.
In the first
that
3
is
rounds,
blasphemy.
In the first 3 rounds of Green Bay,
that's
doesn't
unreal.
Take a receiver. All right, next guy up here, we've got Nelson Agholor. Had a career season with the Las Vegas Raiders for 48 receptions, 896 yards. So clearly getting it done on a yards per catch basis. 8 touchdowns for Nelson this year. And
pretty darn good.
He didn't even start the season as a starter on the lineup. So Nelson came in. He was a bit of a flash in the pan in the Super Bowl year with the Eagles. He was a huge disappointment until that point, and he was very disappointing after. I remember Philadelphia versus Atlanta.
Yep.
Nelson Agholor had the game-winning catch wide open. He completely burned his defender, running down the sideline and just goes straight
the Javon Wims moment right
through
there.
his hands. And that was the moment when every citizen of Philadelphia decided that he is no longer welcome in this town and he needs to leave.
Well, how I saw it was kind of like the Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
He left and went to the Cowboys, and now he's got good QB play. When
Not
he's
this
healthy,
year.
but Dalton started to figure it out.
Dalton
He started
did
to
okay.
heat up. Cooper started to heat up at the end of the season, which definitely helped some teams that did draft him in fantasy. Cooper's pretty good. I mean, it's like Agholor. They're good receivers. When they can catch, they're going to make plays, and they're decent route runners, so that helps them
Right.
out.
Yeah, I definitely don't think Nelson Agholor is on the level of Amari
No,
Cooper.
but this year he looked way better than anyone expected,
Right.
considering how he used to be. Yeah.
For what they paid him and what they probably expected, he definitely exceeded expectations. The Raiders are tight with money, though. Right now, they're actually over the cap for 2021, so they might have to make some, well, they're going to have to either let some players walk or make some roster cuts. And I don't know if Nelson Agholor is a part of this football team next year. I mean, they drafted Bryan Edwards in the 2nd or 3rd round. They picked up Henry Ruggs in the early 1st round. So, obviously, they have some hope for him there. I'm personally not a Henry Ruggs guy.
I'm not either.
I actually prefer Bryan Edwards over him. But we'll see what happens in year 2. Obviously, they were both pretty quiet this season. Nelson Agholor, though, is a serviceable piece. I think he's definitely a flex-type player. I don't think he's going to be in that wide receiver 2 level that he was this season. Particularly because he got to play some good defenses or some easy defenses that are advantageous for fantasy matchups. So I don't really think it matters where Agholor goes. He's a field stretcher. He can pretty much fit in anywhere. But at the end of the day, quarterback play is going to be a big factor. And if he's able to keep his hands together, it's going to be a big deal too. So moving to our last player here, we've got Curtis Samuel.
It's a guy I really like.
I love me some Curtis Samuel of the Carolina Panthers, 25 years old, out of Ohio State. Moving off that rookie contract, Carolina surprised me. They only have $13 million in cap, and they've already got DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson under contract. DJ Moore on the rookie deal, but that being a first-round contract. And Robbie Anderson, I believe, signed a 3-year, $27 million contract.
Something like that.
So, my thoughts on Curtis Samuel is he's a really versatile guy. He's super explosive, and when he gets in the open field, he can make things happen. I really like the value he adds to football teams. As a Packer fan, I actually watched Curtis Samuel, and the first thing that pops into my mind is Randall Cobb in his prime. Cobb on his rookie contract was sensational. He was extremely elusive, shifty, hard to bring down.
That run after catch is one of his biggest things.
And just like Curtis Samuel, they lined Cobb up in the backfield and used him as a running back. And I watched Curtis Samuel run between the tackles this year and be almost impossible to tackle at first contact. I think he's incredibly versatile and useful to Carolina's offense. I think Matt Rule should re-sign this guy in a hurry. I don't think he's going to demand a high contract, but I think Aaron Rodgers would just salivate over having Curtis Samuel to throw the football to. I think offenses like San Francisco, they already have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, but these are the type of teams that he would fit into seamlessly and could probably even be a fantasy star. And I think Curtis Samuel has really, really nice wide receiver 2 potential. I don't think he's a 1, obviously, being here at the list. I think that the wide receiver room in Carolina is a bit crowded. So I would love to see him find a new home and really break out of his shell.
I had him on a team this year, and I would always sit him, and I would always think, you know what, he may just outscore the people I started, and he did.
He did.
He would get 10 points for almost every other week.
He found the end zone.
And then he'd have huge games, like 22 points.
Yeah.
He had some big games where he was a big part of the game plan. So I expect them to get him back with the Panthers here. They have decent cap. Like you said, they already re-signed, or they have Robbie and DJ Moore under contract. So they should be able to bring him back. I really like the receiving core. If they can just stay in those games, they have a chance. I mean, the Panthers aren't that bad. It's just new coach. They've got some issues with the defense, but I like Curtis Samuel. He should be a good fantasy receiver again.
Yeah, I have big expectations for what Curtis Samuel could be. I definitely think, if he goes to the right team, he could definitely be very productive and a player that shocks a lot of teams, or a lot of fantasy players rather, next season. So keep your eye out for Curtis Samuel. This March, I believe, is when free agency opens up. So keep your eye on these players, especially if you guys are in Dynasty. All these names are going to have big impacts on your leagues and how things play out for next year. So especially those guys toward the top, those are going to be big impact players. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel and turn the bell on so you guys are notified whenever we come out with a new video. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.